everybody, this is Eve West. Thank you for tuning in to my YouTube channel. This channel is ultimately dedicated to promoting a book I wrote. It's called Follow. It's an ebook. You can find it on Amazon.com under the Kindles tab if you're interested. I have a link in the description of this video. If you would like to learn more about my story and the esoteric topics that I explore on this channel. This particular, well, just to kind of give you just a quick idea of what Follow is about, my book. My book deals with a holistic view of spirituality, looking at it not just from a purely psychological point of view, but also a earthly. And so when we think of spirituality, we think of love. We think of, intuition, creativity, all those conceptual aspects of who we are. But we are also earthly, and so this corresponds to the reptilian brain, which you can see, taste, touch, smell, and hear. And so when we look at the reptilian brain, we're typically shunned from embracing that aspect of us within the matrix environment. So we're really pushed to be super duper psychological. And so that's done on purpose to leave us earthbound, because the whole purpose is to make sure that we stay in this reality and we don't leave. We don't leave. The whole purpose is to keep us here as slaves. And so whenever you're not balancing your spiritual, your psychological mind with your earthly, you're not balancing that, you can't ascend. Just like a plane has to have, two equal wings. Same thing when it comes to your consciousness. You can't be super feminine minded, right-brained, and then be super duper deflated with your left brain. And so I look at the various constructs of the matrix, and I explore those constructs that help to divide the mind and to actually deflate the masculine aspect of the mind, such as media, entertainment, religion, education, the familial structure, the government structure itself. And so those constructs actually, basically give you two yous, okay? Some people call it Adam and Eve, Isis and Ra. In Freudian psychology, it's called the ego and the id. And so there are two yous. You have a you that you are in physicality, and you have a you that you go to at night when you go to sleep. So when you go to sleep, you don't identify with any concepts of the matrix. You're not a man, you're not a woman, you're not rich, you're not poor, you're not black, you're not white. You're nothing really. And so you work out the restrictions that you had in physicality, because as a physical being, you have restrictions and rules and laws to follow. So you're a slave to your astral aspect of you. But your astral aspect of you will cultivate a desire within this realm, so it can have access to your desires and manifestation of your desires on the astral realm. So what does that mean? Well, your astral self may want a car, so we'll cultivate a desire for you to have to want that car, and not give you the physical means to I guess you would say manifest it. So it can actually, when you go to sleep at night, you can have it there in heaven. This is what we call heaven. When you die and you go to heaven. So that's that whole concept there. The astral realm is heaven, and is the heaven that they're talking about in Christian theology. And so, I look at, pretty much how the microcosm of my life, how that correlates to a holistic view of spirituality, and how that actually connects to the macrocosm of the world at large. So I really highly suggest that you check Follow out. It offers a lot of occult knowledge, and it's knowledge that you're not going to find on any other channel, I promise you, because the knowledge true knowledge comes from within. Okay, so in true knowledge, you can't really find it in a book. With true knowledge, you can't really find it on television. You can't find it, when someone telling you something, a professor, a teacher, or something like that. True knowledge comes from within yourself. And so this knowledge definitely has come from within. And the way that I explain this knowledge to you, it does make sense at the atomic level. So, if you can kind of put the dots together. And so one of the things I want to talk about here is sex. I want to talk about sex and beta sex kitten slaves, because I've been really seeing a whole lot of videos and things like that pertaining to beta sex kitten slaves, and really there's a lot of misconceptions and falsities in terms of what a beta sex kitten slave is. Okay, and innuendos pointing towards me being a beta sex kitten slave. And so, there is some validity to that, if you will, and I'm going to explain that here. because a beta sex kitten slave definitely is given a bad rap. It's like, oh, that person is, like some type of succubus or something like that. But that's not really what it is at all. A beta sex kitten slave, this is going back to symbology in the Bible about the Whore of Babylon. The Whore of Babylon basically is a beta sex kitten slave. And also too, this is, a picture that's painted in the media as well, like media entertainment, like Nicki Minaj. Nicki Minaj to me is the epitome of what a beta sex kitten slave is. Not only is she super sexual and super charged in that regard, but she's known to switch personalities. She has split personalities, and so she dissociates into other people. And one of her split personalities is Roman. And so this correlates to Rome, of course, the one that's responsible for killing Jesus, right, or the Lamb of God, or whatever you want to call it. And actually, Nicki Minaj was actually photographed one year being married to the Pope. So really, this has a lot to do with Rome. Beta sex kitten slaves have a lot to do with Rome. And so I'm going to just kind of delve right into it, and I hope I don't really miss anything. I really want to cover all bases to really kind of destroy the misconceptions of what a beta sex kitten slave is, and so forth. Now let's look at the term beta. Beta refers to a brainwave frequency. Okay, so just to kind of let you know, beta sex kitten slaves are programmed. Okay. And so beta is the brainwave frequency of the ego. So what is the ego? Let's go back to, some basic things here. Your ego is you. It's the physical aspect of who you are. An ego has a name. An ego has, oftentimes has has a race. Oftentimes has a religion. Has a family, has an education. The ego is a false you, something that's been artificially created by the matrix environment. And it's a false you because in another lifetime you will be a different race, a different gender, I don't know, a different religion, you might have a different country, you're born into a family that, that might be Indian or something like that, and you might be a Sikh or something. Whatever the case is, the thing is that the ego is artificial. And so this corresponds to beta. Beta is the brainwave frequency of the ego. So really, mostly in the matrix, since we're living unconsciously as an ego, we only focus on our religion, or we only focus mainly on our education, or we focus mainly on our gender, or mainly on our race, or what have you. And so the beta, a beta being, if you will, the ego, is only really there to focus on a fraction of information. If you actually focused on everything, then your brain would shut down, pretty much. You couldn't focus on all the religions, all the races, and so forth. You mainly live from a more narcissistic, if you will, type of frequency. So this is beta. And so whenever you are doing this, you're suppressing the information that's unconsciously fed into your consciousness, purposely. You're purposely suppressing information. And so as a beta slave, you, what should I say? As a beta slave, you are really just a doll. You're really just kind of like a doll. And so the person that's governing your existence, or what you would call your handler, like for example, my handler is King James of Scotland. And so he has purposely created or artificially created this ego, if you will. So in another dimension, what some people call heaven, or in the astral realm, I'm considered to be a beta sex kitten slave. Okay. And so the thing is that, people don't really understand, but a beta sex kitten slave is a saint, or more of a saintly being in the physical. Okay. They're a saintly being in the physical. Rome values saints, but a saint is a very unholy being. A saint is super feminine in the physical or spiritual. So whenever you're super feminine in the physical, then you must be super masculine, and carnal on the astral when you go to sleep at night. You don't have any balance. And so that's the reason why they value saints. Saints are filthy whores, really, on the astral realm. And there's so much coming out about the Catholic Church. Like, I was looking at South Park the other night, and they were talking about the priests and how the priests are going to keep kids from talking about their molestation and stuff like that. Because, you know, they're trying to desensitize people to the stuff that they've done. The Catholic Church is really trying to desensitize by making fun and poking fun of molesting little children. When, you know, well, they're using shows, I should say, like South Park to do that. But really, it's nothing funny about it. It's nothing funny about it. And the thing is that the truth is coming to light, and so now they want to, you know, really use shows like South Park and things like that to really kind of downplay their involvement, if you will, within it. But beta sex kitten slaves are abused at a very young age. Like I said, you know, I was abused when I was younger, and I was purposely showing pornography and things like that to rot out my earthly sacral or imbalance my solar plexus. Some people call it the Kundalini in New Age. And so, you know, your Kundalini is your seat of creativity and your seat of your will. That's an energy system. It's called a chakra. If you're not familiar with these, you know, terms, if you will, because there's a lot of prerequisites that go into understanding my videos. So if you don't know about chakras and the solar plexus and what, you know, how it's connected to your genitals and your will and that type of thing, I really suggest that you do some research. But I used to have horrible cramps. Horrible cramps. In fact, when I had my daughter, my cramps were much more severe than when I was growing up and being abused than they were when I was in labor with my daughter. So that goes to show that, you know, the severity of our abuse as we're children. And so that's done purposely because within the physical, you're designed to be a giver. You're designed to be a giver of your sexual nature, so you can really, to be honest with you, in another dimension, turn tricks in another dimension. And this is done for the elite. Okay, this is done for the elite. And also too, you know, the elite on the astral realm are white males. They are white males on the astral realm. And so I was purposely taught to hate black men, if you will, in this dimension, so I would prefer white men on the astral realm in another dimension. And so that's why, you know, I was given a father that, you know, growing up, my dad was a raging alcoholic. Most of the men in my family, they cheated on their wives, beat their wives, or stole money from them. You know, I was just programmed with certain, you know, television things like the color purple. You see like black men in the color purple, or a negative picture is painted of them. They molest their children, rape their children, beat their wives. I mean, all that stuff was really disseminated into my consciousness to hate black men. Okay, now that I'm waking up, I see the insidious programming behind it. But that was all done so when I went to sleep at night, I could go ahead and service white men on the astral realm. Because, you know, it's interesting. You never really see the relationship between a black woman and a white male at the atomic level. But really, to be honest with you, on the astral realm, you will see white males with black women because they are like magnets. You know, a white male does not have a lot of, you know, doesn't really have melanin like that, right? And so the thing is that, you know, whenever you're severely deficient of melanin, right, which is the feminine aspect of you connected to your pineal gland, so your pineal gland is feminine, plus you already have a disposition to be male or masculine because you're a male, you're super duper deficient of the feminine. A black woman, in the same way, is super deficient of the masculine because she has, you know, melanin connected to the pineal gland. And also, she's, you know, she's feminine. She's a female, so she has a predisposition to be more feminine, inflated. You know, you're super duper feminine. So super duper feminine is always paired with super duper masculine on the astral realm because they both are lacking within themselves in some way. And so that's why you don't really see the black woman and the white male come together in the physical plane, because they're trying to cultivate a desire for each other on the astral realm. You know, it's kind of like you always want what you can't have type of thing, or what have you. So that's the type of, I guess you would say, you know, desire that they try to cultivate, or what have you. But the beta sex kitten slave is an ego. And so, you know, the ego actually has multiple personalities, okay? And so the thing is that these personalities are cultivated via the matrix. Everything within the matrix is based upon monarch programming. Even like when I said getting into the Bible and all the contradictions I point out in the Bible, this is creating what you would call multiple personalities. That's why slaves who were taught the Bible, although they couldn't read. You ask yourself, why would slaves be taught the Bible, although they couldn't read? Obviously, they didn't want the slaves to run away, right? So there must be something about the Bible that they knew would be effective in enslaving the minds, if you will, of people, of black people. And so, you know, they've really gone further with this in terms of A Course in Miracles. And I talk about how I was given A Course in Miracles to actually feed even more contradictions into my mind, which is monarch programming. But everything in the Matrix is monarch programming. Everything. I mean, media entertainment, we're always taught, you know, to embrace lust and wrath and gluttony and all these different things. But as soon as we begin to do those things, we're shunned and we're judged. And so this creates a contradiction. Why feed me gluttony when you don't want me to be gluttonous and overweight? Why feed me lust when you don't want me to be a whore? Why feed me wrath and all these television shows and things like that, and video games, killing people for hours, but you don't want me to be violent and, you know, and wrathful? And so this creates a dissociation, really. It creates a dissociation and contradictions, and it creates multiple personalities within the mind. And they do this purposely. Programming is done purposely. And so, you know, even the music, like if you listen to a lot of the music now, it's promoting prostitution. Like Money by, what's her name? Cardi B. You know, Cardi B in the song Money, she's talking about prostitution. She says, you know, shake a little ass, you know, get a little bag and take it to the store. You shake it a little faster, you know, get a little more. She's talking about prostitution. Even like Iggy Azalea in her song Started, you know, she's saying that, not Started, what is it? Little Sally Walker. You know, Little Sally Walker, she's talking about prostitution. You know, she's like, if you do it for free, that's ass backwards. She's talking about being a hoe. That's what she's talking about. This is beta sex kitten, I guess as you would say, programming. Really infusing within your mind prostitution and so forth so you can be a whore. This is Whore of Babylon stuff. And so, you know, people really don't, you know, understand what beta sex kitten slavery is all about. But it really has a lot to do with the mind. And so, you know, like I was saying before, if you are super duper feminine here, or spiritual, then you're super duper masculine when you shed your concepts and you're in the astral realm, and so you service the elite and you're a prostitute there. And so really, to be honest with you, I have no identification, if you will, with this astral aspect of myself that's been purposely made saintly within this dimension, to be a filthy, disgusting whore in another dimension. I have no connection, if you will. And so when my unconscious, when my unconscious was being bridged with my consciousness, and I had access to this filthy whore, I was like, you know, I felt a lot of judgment, because I said to myself, I'm not a whore. You know, I was always taught to be very, you know, sexually prudent, so to speak, in a way. I was taught to be sexually prudent, and so this person that I am on the astral realm, I don't really know who that is. Like, if that person were sitting down and talking to me right now, I would say, who is that? You know, and so that goes to show the dissociation that they use to make you a filthy, disgusting whore. A really good example of this would be, you know, after you finish looking at this video, look up the video for what is it? The video Alejandro by Lady Gaga. Alejandro is a very good video to explain Whore of Babylon. The Whore of Babylon, like I said, is programmed to be a saint in the physical. And so when you look at Alejandro, you see Lady Gaga is being programmed. She looks like a nun. She's a nun and she has a cross. And you can see she's lying down for programming. And as she's lying down for programming, when she gets up out of programming, she becomes a filthy, disgusting slut. And so you see her with ropes and stuff like that, and you see her servicing all of these men. I think she even has like an inverted cross on her vagina. So this is actually telling you what beta sex slaves are. We are made to be super saintly here, so we can be filthy and disgusting there. And so that's what happens to us. Another good video to really exemplify the beta sex kitten slave is Florence and the Machines. Florence and the Machines, what is it? What kind of man? What kind of man loves like this? And so, and what kind of man loves like this? You see Florence, you know, when her kundalini rises, she's a filthy whore. She's a filthy whore. She's in a dungeon. She has like a mattress. Like they put her in the dungeon with a mattress and all these men around her that she's servicing and having sex with. And so, this is beta sex kitten slave programming. She's been programmed to be a whore. She's been programmed to be a whore. You know, super saintly, right? She's being baptized at the end of the video. But when her kundalini rises, she's filthy. And so, you know, there are tons of examples, if you will, in pop culture that really give way to the beta sex kitten slave. But beta sex kitten slaves are prudish in this dimension, so you're not going to walk around and see a beta sex kitten slave at the atomic level, in the physical. Until you're able to go to the astral, that's when the beta sex kitten slave comes out. That's why I have on my Marilyn Monroe. And I have on my red lipstick or what have you, because, you know, there have been suggestions. It's like, oh, you know, you're a beta sex kitten slave, whatever the case is. And, you know, what I say to that is, I am whatever you say I am. If I wasn't, then why would I say I am? And so if you really look at, you know, quote unquote beta sex kitten slaves like Marilyn Monroe, you'll realize that Marilyn Monroe was abused. She was abused when she was a child, and that's the first thing that they do to beta sex kitten slaves: destroy the kundalini, or the masculine aspect of yourself, so you can be super saintly and super feminine in this dimension. And then once you're super feminine, you know, then they can actually take advantage of you. You know, they can actually take advantage of you in another dimension. And so, you know, like I said before, you can't really, you know, because you can't have what you want here. You don't have the knowledge. They've wiped the knowledge away from you from manifesting your desires in this dimension. Then you'll have to work out that restriction somewhere else. And, you know, one thing about sex is one of those artificial ways to really find connection back to yourself. To find connection back to your body, if you will. Because, like I said, if you're made super feminine, you're not in tune with your masculine. And so sex is a way to gratify the body so you can stay in the body, so to speak. And so, you know, since you cannot do that at the physical level without being judged, then when you go to the astral, that's where you do it, where other people benefit from your sexual nature. And so, you know, you copulate just to feel whole, just to feel holy. But, you know, it's a false way of of being holy. All of the major vices of the matrix or demiurge, whatever, are artificial ways of being holy. You know, sex, food, money, what else is it? Sex, food, money, drugs. These are different ways that, you know, a beta sex kitten slave will use to find wholeness and connection to the self. In other words, to find some balance to the feminine, super feminine nature. And so, you know, I know people don't typically think of, you know, beta sex kitten slaves as saints, but they are. They're really truly angels at the atomic level. They really are angels. And also, too, another video that kind of sheds a little bit of light on a beta sex kitten slave is that song by Ed Sheeran. It's called The A-Team. And in that video, if you look up that video, it says there's like a little sign in that video. It's very quick, you have to catch it, but it says improving the angel, and the angel was a I guess what you would call a prostitute. The girl in the A-Team was a prostitute, and it says improving the angel, and so it's associating her with an angel. And so really, to be honest with you, you know, beta sex kittens are angels. They are lambs, or the lambs of God. And so it says in the Bible how, you know, God slays a lamb for his pleasure. And so, meaning that God actually programs people to be beta sex kitten slaves. A beta sex kitten slave is, you know, it's just someone who's very saintly, made to be restricted, and they're masculine, and then they are, which makes them super feminine. And so because of that, then they work out the restrictions in the astral realm. So one thing I want to talk about before I, you know, shut down this video that's very important. I talked about certain videos like the A-Team, Ed Sheeran. I've talked about that, what is it? Alejandro by Lady Gaga. You know, I talked a little bit about Nicki Minaj and how she's a super sex-charged beta, you know, sex kitten. She switches personalities, one of which is Roman, right? Rome, connected to Jesus, the solar plexus, the sun, the kundalini, the earthly sacral. But one video, hands down, that gives validity to the beta sex kitten slave is a video by YouTube, by YouTube, and it's called Mysterious Ways by YouTube. This, hands down, I promise you, you will understand the creation of a beta sex kitten slave if you watch this video. And I suggest, because, you know, if you don't have an open third eye, you're not going to catch it. Like before my third eye was open, I did not catch this, so you have to watch it multiple times. But in the video, it shows women being suppressed in their physical as egos. So when they go to sleep at night and they're on the moon, because the moon represents the unconscious, right? They are what you would call a belly dancer, corresponding to the solar plexus, the belly. I mean, there's so many clues, if you will, in this video. It explains it hands down. I don't even have to say anything. You know, I can just say a little bit. You watch that video, like, oh, that's how they make beta sex kitten slaves. But in the video, Mysterious Ways, you see two types of women. Okay, one type of woman, they have on burqas. Now, I'm not saying anything about the burqa. You know, if you love the burqa, what have you, and you know that's a part of your beliefs, then that's fine. You know, I'm just talking about my take on the burqa, okay? So I'm not disrespecting anybody's, you know, religious practices or anything like that. But women wear the burqa to cover up their bodies, to cover up your body. And so from an esoteric standpoint, this deals with covering up the masculine aspect of you, okay? Anytime you have to cover up something that, you know, is something you can't change, that's the part of the masculine, the atomic aspect of you, the reptilian aspect of you. So my breasts, my buttocks, you know, all these different things, my lips, all of these things, on my eyes even, because I think the burqa, you have to wear like a little thing over your eyes too. I think it's like a little drape or something like that. But anything that will consider to be somewhat sexual is covered up with the burqa. And so really, you know, I've spoken to, you know, people that I know of to be Muslim and so forth, and they talk about how the burqa, you know, really corresponds to, what is it? The burqa really corresponds to beauty, and how it is a type of humility when it comes to women. So, you know, as far as I'm concerned, you know, I feel, me personally, I feel that I should not have to cover up anything that I can't do anything about. Especially. I can't do anything about my breasts, you know, my buttocks, my lips, my eyes, those things. And so those things are a problem or issue for you, you know, then you need to deal with that yourself. So, you know, that's just me. But hey, if you feel differently, I totally respect that, but this is just my views and my freedom of speech. And so whenever, as from an esoteric standpoint, you're doing that, you're suppressing the masculine, when the person goes to sleep, those women who are in burqas, you see them dancing in front of the moon as a belly dancer. And so the reason why they use the belly dancer, because the belly is tied to the solar plexus, your earthly sacral, what they call in New Age the Kundalini. So the reason why I mention this is because beta sex slaves are deprived in the at the atomic level as an ego, okay, such as with religions and so forth and the various constructs of the matrix. So they can be filthy whores in the astral. So the astral is represented by the moon, okay? That's why they say freaks come out at night, and you know, when something strange happens, they'll say, oh, you know, there's a full moon, it was a full moon or something like that, and that was the reason why, you know, such and such happened. Because this is where you go to at night. So from a celestial standpoint, you know, you're the sun when you're an ego, but you are the moon when you are go to sleep at night. You're in the astral realm, and so you're working out your restrictions. So those women that are covered up, they're really out there. So they are what you would call beta sex kitten slaves. Now another thing I want you to know in terms of beta is that these women are well, I should say the cinematography of the video. If you look at the cinematography of the video for Mysterious Ways, you will notice that that the women, well, not the women, but just the whole video itself, it's very chaotic. Like it's jumbled up. Like you can barely watch it without getting vertigo. Okay, you can barely watch it without getting vertigo because because basically beta doesn't catch everything. So they're telling you these are beta sex slaves because the frequency of beta, if you research this, go online and research this. If you look at beta compared to other brainwave frequencies, it's very chaotic. And so the video is very chaotic. They're telling you this is a beta brainwave frequency that these women are in. They are in a very saintly way as egos or suns, but they're in a very slower brainwave frequency when they go to meet themselves on the astral realm. And so they're filthy, you know, whores pretty much. And like I said, they use belly dancers because the belly represents the masculine aspect of the soul, where they take out the kundalini, as they call it, or the earthly sacral, or the solar plexus. They imbalance it. So you can be super feminine and nice and sweet, if you will, in the physical. And you don't have connection to yourself, if you will, on, you know, in this particular reality. So you can be filthy and disgusting in that reality. And I think that for the most part is really what I'm trying to point out here. You see the two snakes, if you will, because the two snakes represent also, from an esoteric standpoint, it represents the yin and the yang. And so the yin and the yang represent the women in burqas and the woman dancing in front of the moon. The women in burqas are the women. Is the woman dancing in front of the moon. And I think too, because they showed multiple women in burqas and how there's one woman dancing in front of the moon, it also gives way to the split personalities of the ego. The ego has split personalities or dissociative personalities, and so there's only one woman there. But it's appearing in the physical as multiple people. And so when you're in the physical, you're multiple people. Your mind is being divided. And the ego is divided when you are short-circuiting the nervous system, feeding contradictions into the mind, you know, damaging the soul with sexuality and so forth. And because like I said, you know, when I was younger, I was abused, and I was shown pornography to rot out my kundalini and to actually cultivate a desire for sex at an early age. And so when that happened, and you know, I was having orgasms at a very young age, it short-circuited my nervous system, which started the process of, which I would call dissociative or split personalities. And so you gain split personalities when you are, I guess you would say, having orgasms. Because the orgasm, they call it the little death, if you will, in certain religions. And when you study Tantra, or especially like white Tantra, it teaches you to have sex without orgasm. Because when you have orgasm, you're flooding a whole lot of dopamine to the brain. And when you're flooding a lot of dopamine to the brain, it's very difficult for you to reach a high in physicality. You have to kind of keep pushing the envelope and pushing the envelope. And so, you know, once you do that, you short circuit the nervous system, then there's no one that's really going to be able to please you, if you will, in physicality. You know, you would have to please yourself, because no one can really meet the mark, so to speak. And they do that intentionally to damage the soul. So I really think that that's all that I wanted to point out in mysterious ways. Like I said, it gives validity to the reason why we call beta sex kitten slaves beta, with the chaotic, you know, cinematography, if you will, that brainwave frequency of the ego. How we're two people, we're the saints and the sinners, if you will, because of how our masculine is suppressed, you know, with covering up the masculine, the body. The body is the reptilian brain, which you can see, taste, touch, smell, and hear. That is what I consider to be the masculine part, your reptilian brain, and how the imbalance of that creates a filthy whore in another realm. If you will. And so, you know, at the atomic level, I just wanted to debunk that whole thing about a beta sex kitten slave. You seeing a beta sex kitten slave in the physical, you will not see that. A beta sex kitten slave is very prudish, or more so prudish than anybody else walking around, you know. Like if you mention sex to a beta sex kitten slave in physicality, they will be like, oh my gosh, like, you know, no sex before marriage, or they'll, you know, they have to really get to know somebody before they have sex with them, or, you know, they just have a whole lot of guidelines and things like that as it pertains to sex, and they're purposely made to be that way, because they're purposely made to deny their masculine self so they can be whores on the astral realm. So really, you know, that's all that I wanted to talk about. Just wanted to kind of get that out there, if you will, and to really just kind of give some, you know, occult knowledge about what a beta sex kitten slave is. All right, guys, so thanks for watching, and I will see you in my next video.